Hi everybody, this is Bruce with habowskistudio, and I'm out painting in Maine today. It's about 60 degrees, beautiful sunny skies, and breezy though, so I hope the sound isn't too bad. I originally came to paint this, try to zoom in here, that kind of viewpoint. I still might do that, but this barn caught my attention, so I think I might do that instead. So let's get started. I'm going to be using my little viewfinder that I made to get a composition, zoom in on what kind of organization I want on the panel, and so we get everything set up, and then I'll pick out a composition. Okay, the palette today I'm going to be using is burnt sienna, burnt umber, titanium white, ultramarine blue, cerulean blue, cad yellow pale, cad yellow medium, alizarin crimson, and cad red. And then, of course, I'll be using an assortment of brushes and my liquid impasto gel for medium. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me. Today I'm working on a 1/4 inch, I believe it's MDF or Masonite. I work on either one. You can see I placed an X to show you the center of the panel, and show me the center of the panel so I know where to place my objects for a more interesting composition, and just helps not to place things directly in the center. Now today I'm working on a white, just plain gessoed panel. Normally I tone a panel, and in hindsight, I try different things, but I do not like working on a white panel. I believe it's better to tone them some kind of color. I usually use like a gray, kind of warm, like a umber tone, something of that nature. I think it just helps better. Here I am just getting some umber for the sketch, nailing my some darks and such to facilitate and help with the when the light changes a little bit. Still blocking in here. And as you saw in the beginning, I was going to paint that Lovejoy pond, but when I saw this, the light just wasn't what I wanted for the pond view. So just getting form to the shapes as fast as possible so I get a sense if the painting's going to work or not. Getting a little bit of the background going. Just checking my lines and that sort of thing. I think it's really important to do that. And you could break this out into more segments too, instead of just that X diagonal. It's up to you how much you think you need to paint and stuff like that. Now I'm just going to start getting some shapes of the distant trees in. Get that applied. Got some slight angles going on there in the ground plane. This cool little tree in the foreground adds a nice counterpoint, so it's just not too much empty grass around. And when I work on that later, it'll be nice for the top of the little tree there to be set off against the distant trees. Moving around the panel, I tend to do that, a little of this, a little of that. Now here I am going to buff out some of the damp umber value just so it can start tacking up a bit. Yeah, I don't use it too thick. I'm just using turpentine to thin it out a bit. Now here's a little time lapse of me finishing the process of blocking in the background plane and base tone of the grass color. buffing it out with the paper towel a little bit. With the breeze and this heat a little bit, it'll help facilitate tacking up a tad. Now working on the overhang of the little add-on there. Now I'm getting ready to paint the side of the barn in sunlight. Now the barn is dark, so what you want to be careful of is our first instinct is to make that too light in tone because it's in sunlight. Don't forget dark objects absorb sunlight, so you want to be careful. You could go either way. Start with the very dark of the shadow side of the barn so you have a relationship to base on. I went this way. Probably would be easier the other way, but this way I chose. No big deal. Worked out for me in the end. So, but if you're unsure if you might get the correct darkness, then yes, start with the dark shadows that you start with elements you can get right and correct quickly, and that'll help you gauge other elements in the painting that you might be having trouble with. Like if you're not sure if they're going to be too dark, too light. And when I'm applying this paint in the dark area, I'm kind of putting it on kind of rough because I might use that texture to suggest weathered boards later. Now starting on the shadow under the overhang there, getting some dark shapes in there. It's really how quickly the form can come together is quite interesting. Just kind of getting some tones in. Get the little window. I'm going to zoom in here so you can see how the texture's kind of getting in there a bit, especially in the shadow side of the barn. Now I'm going to work on the shadow on the overhang a little bit. It's not a huge overhang on the roof, but the cast shadow is a little big because of the angle of the light. And I'll clean up the lines of the roof of the overhang. You'll see later. Starting to work on getting the base tones of the trees in the background. Cut around the barn, the little overhang roof there. You'll see the clips kind of certain parts have been painted along. I want to edit this in such a way that you didn't need to see every little moment. Time lapse of putting in the poles that support the roof there. Nice effect, a light touch of putting the light tone of paint through the dark paint, and it slightly blends, adding it to really allow it to set back in there. Now for the sky tone against the tree line there, I've used cerulean blue and white. Top I've used ultramarine blue and white. And as they approach each other, I'll combine a mixture of the two a little bit, and then, of course, more cerulean with white a little more. So it kind of cools as it goes towards the horizon. And you can see how the X that I created in the beginning, you want to be careful that that's not too dark, and because it's tacked up in the heat and everything, that it might show through the paint. In the area like where you see the line through the roof of the barn, that'll be covered up with dark paint. But if you think it's going to be too dark, those sketch lines, kind of get them wet with some turpentine and try to wipe them out a little bit just to leave a ghost image. With a paper towel, rub it out. Just blocking in the sky here. Trying to use some interesting strokes And even if I'm going to do other layers, I want to try to pay attention to the strokes I use in the initial layer so they don't interrupt the final look that I want to achieve when the painting's done. And painting today was just, wow, quite a mess with the very windy, as you can see in the probably grasses behind me painting there. Um, Pretty distracting, but as plein air painters, we're going to get all kinds of weather situations. And I almost didn't go out because it's so windy, but I wanted to test the endurance, so to speak, to find out what techniques I need and systems I need to develop in case you get high wind situations, so you can keep it as enjoyable as possible. Blocking in the distant hill there. Trying to get some cool greens in the distance there. And then when I do the warm greens, you'll see coming forward. I think it adds some nice interest and creates some depth. The barn has a really neat shape to it. It's definitely something I might revisit in the future. Now see, when I'm working this color here, you want to be careful. See how the green's going up into sky. You don't want to mess around too much. Your paint will start getting milky because I painted the sky first. You could do this whole section of the hill with the distant trees first, and then use your sky color and cut around. Um, Cut right up to the edge of your tree shapes and hill shape, and then with another brush, finesse your edges to create the lost and found edges that you want. Probably in the future I will try that. I do different things, depending on the subject matter. Subject matter will dictate. That's why I want to try different methods when I paint and stuff, so that if there's a subject that I want to do, I'll have different, like a toolbox to work from. I won't be trying to use the same method that may not be very good for that representation. So you got to experiment. I'm not looking necessarily to do highly finished paintings when I do my plein air adventures. I'm really learning how to see color and mix it naturally. And later on, when I get a little more comfortable, I might push it more here and there. Um, but for me, the goal's kind of always been try to mimic nature to learn how to mix color. Then bring that back in the studio. I go for probably about 80% accuracy for color tones. And certain conditions, like you'll see in the roof of the barn shortly, where my editing comes into play. So you can see how I blocked in that tone of color for the roof and how it's more warmer than what you see in the reference photo. I thought in the reference photo, the actual scene was enough interest. So that's where I changed it. Didn't make the value too, I didn't make the paint too chromatic. Now here I am again talking about, you see me painting the tree, scumbling very lightly, some suggesting leaves on the trees and that sort of thing. And you can see we're going to, you can potentially run into the problem of painting into the wet sky again. So you want to be careful of messing around too much before you wipe off your brush and pick up new paint. Again, painting the trees and hill first, you can cut around the sky and then finesse your edges, whichever you prefer. And I just like the idea of breaking that hill line too with some foreground trees. Gives you a chance to create depth. Now here we are blocking in over the original tone of the green, some heavier paint, still a little washy. Trying to use some directional lines, lead the viewer into the barn. And was just so windy that, oh my gosh, what a challenge. You see the paint's not very thick in that foreground grass, but now here I am just working on doing some tree trunks, very light toned paint. Which I want to be careful of here is pressing too hard with the paint. I'm picking up a lot of paint on the brush and there's lightly. You could take a palette knife and kind of scrape through where you want tree trunks and then put the dark paint so it doesn't mix with previous layers too much if you're worried about having a light touch. But I'm just trying to get the essence of the background trees. Working on the tree still, tree trunks. Just getting enough interest, not going too crazy. A little detail on the little smokestack aluminum kind of piping coming out of the little shed thing underneath, and that shadow cast by the elbow coming out of the wall of the shed. The light is at about, if you're looking at my painting right now, about at 11 o'clock, up in the upper left-hand corner. Darkening up some angle, some shadows. Using my maul stick to steady my hand on this detail work. The maul stick is, you might have seen another video, collapsible tripod leg that I took off of an old tripod I wasn't using, so I have three collapsible maul sticks now. I keep one in the studio and one in my gear. Just putting some touches here and there. A little more cooler blue, show the reflection of the aluminum. Just trying to touch up some of the, add a little detail in the window. Haven't decided yet. I might put a window in the shadow side of the barn, just a little small one. Add some interest over there, because you'll have the reflected light from sky in there to bring in a little bit of light. Haven't decided. Let all the paint tack up. Now I'm cutting back around some of the poles that I put in there to shape them up a bit, and also create some darker tones in the shadows. I like that little piece of green of the distant field showing through the opening in the shadow there of the barn. Lots of fun. So this was definitely a interesting painting experience. Overall, I like the composition and how the barn came out. Definitely might, like I said, revisit this location. Do another version, cleaning up some edges. I want to thank you for joining me and checking out my video. And until the next painting adventure, we will talk to you later.
Okay, everybody, I'm just going to say it. It's beautiful out here in Maine, but boy, did it suck painting. I mean, it was windy, and of course you got cars whizzing by, but the wind, I was trying to concentrate on the painting and hoping the easels wouldn't blow over and that sort of thing. But hey, you know what? I'm going to post this anyway, because this is what happens when you plein air paint. Not everything's perfect, and the painting, as you can see, is a little bit of a hot mess, and I'll probably do a few more minutes of video at home when I'm away from the wind and all that sort of thing. And but thanks for joining me anyway. Really appreciate it. And you know, not every outing can be a success, and I'll probably go home and study this. Maybe I did take a reference photo for the video purposes, and also just to have one. So I might work on it a little bit more. I don't know. Study it when I get home. Okay, whoa, wind's blowing, as you can see. Okay, I'm gonna go. Bye.